Okay, so welcome to class. In this lesson, we have garment decoration techniques, like we mentioned. So, it is anything that you want to use to decorate a garment. This is limited to garment, but you can also decorate fabric. Okay, but we are limiting this to garment decoration techniques. However, you can whatever technique that we use for decorating a garment, you can still use the same technique for decorating fabric. It's the same thing. So let's look at what the whole lesson is about. So the course is aimed at equipping a student with the creative and innovative knowledge and skills to effectively decorate garments. Garment decoration improves the aesthetic, which is beauty, and final value of textiles. If you remember, we mentioned that textile is not only about fabric. A bag is a textile product. Even the furniture we have in our chambers are also textile. Textile is broad, so it further introduces the student to variety of techniques that are also avenues for future job opportunities for students and graduates. Now we have people that have skills with skills in fabric decoration. In our setting here, what we mostly know is the embellishment. That's what people do. Once you say fabric decoration, they are thinking, oh, so it's embellishment. You are going to bead the garment or the fabric, or the next thing probably they will think is sequence. But a lot of people don't even think of the sequence. They rather um, concentrate on the beading. Meanwhile, we have different techniques of fabric decoration, which is not limited to only beads and sequins. There are so many varieties which we will look at. Right. So, and then we even have certain fashion companies. They need people who can decorate fabrics. Like I'm saying, most of the jobs that come out these days are embellishing. So they stitch the garment. They just want somebody who can do the embellishing for them. That's all. And embellishing adds value to the clothing. Definitely, if you stitch a raw clothing and, for example, you are selling that garment at 200 cedis. Once you add a decorative technique, it will move from 200 cedis. It will be more. Probably because of the materials you bought, they are expensive. And then the technique you use, the time involved in making that decoration technique will even add to the cost of the garment. So probably from 200 cedis, probably it may move to something like 800 or 1,000. So it adds value to a piece, a textile piece or a garment, all right, and value as well. Then what are the objectives of the course, the goal? What are you looking at? So by the end of this course itself, the student or the learner will be able to design and create patterns in various textile crafts. Before you design anything, you might have sketched it and probably transferred the sketch onto whatever fabric or garment you want to work on. So you will be designing and you will be creating. It is not always that you go and copy somebody's design or a symbol or a motif somewhere. You can also create your own. So you decorate garments using various textile crafts that include embroidery, appliqué, patchwork, beading, braiding, crocheting, sequins, quilting, etc. Then you demonstrate an appreciable knowledge in designing and construction of pictorial textile prints. This is about printing, a bit of printing. So we'll be doing that, but not in a larger scale. Pictorial means a picture. Usually, we do it in frames. Okay, so when we get there, we'll continue. Now, let me put this in reading mode. Okay. We know this already. For the content to be covered is deduced from the objectives. So we'll continue. Then, what is a decoration technique? If you look critically, I didn't say what is fabric decoration, garment decoration technique, because I don't want to limit it to garment in this definition. So it is what is decoration technique, because you can apply decoration technique on anything you want to apply it on, any textile and fabric. So a decoration technique is any visual aesthetic added to an already made garment or fabric. Already made garment or fabric. So you already have your garment which is already made, and and the fabric which is already made. It is in a usable form already. So you add visual aesthetic, which is it means that this is something you can see with your eyes. Okay, you can see it. You can even feel it, which means you can rub your hands over whatever you are doing. So there are various techniques of decoration, such as we have mentioned the examples. I have also added some and given explanation of them. So you can see there's a long list of um, decoration techniques here. Embellishment, which is the beading and the sequins and stuff. Then we have embroidery, applique, cut and sew. I have a detailed lesson on cut and sew. Then we have patchwork, beading, braiding. I'll send the slides. So crocheting, sequins, quilting. You know the difference between sequins and glitters. Yes. Um, quilting, knitting, screen printing, dye sublimation, direct to garment technique. These techniques add more value to an apparel, fabric, and any textile. And any of these methods can be used depending on the designer's preference of taste or customer demand. So if you are a designer and you are just producing to sell, mostly like ready to wear garments, it means that you are going to design most of these garments, for example, let's put fabric aside. So these garments to your taste, as in it will be limited to your creativity. But if you are going to design for a particular customer, maybe the person is requesting for something unique, then you have to follow the demands of the customer, okay, or consumer. So this is for decoration technique. Any questions here? All right. So decoration technique crafts, which are the examples I just gave. So let's look at what embroidery is. We know what embroidery is anyway, but we still go through it. So it is the art or practice of embellishing the surface of textiles with decorative stitching using colorful threads. Please note decorative stitching. It's not only if you say stitching now, we have so many ways of stitching, but this one is decorative and we use colorful threads called called stranded cotton is one. Stranded cotton is the thread that we normally use for embroidery. Stranded cotton. We have stranded cotton, and then we have the ones for crocheting.
Is it like the one on the machine?
The stranded cotton, no. That one is finer. The stranded cotton, you see it's in our list of materials. So you hold on, I'll show you. And then I'm coming. Let me even use my once it opens. I'm sure I have it in my picture if I'm not lying. So today I didn't open mine. So let's look at stranded cotton. Okay, I should have added for embroidery, but yeah. So this is stranded cotton. You've seen it before, right? Yes, but the ones that are very, very, very common with us, what we use is the one that has the stickers, whatever, yeah, around them. That's what we know mostly, okay? But they come in different, this thing. The ply stranded cotton, these ones are the ones we see for crocheting and those things. And they are used for other purposes as well, other decorative methods, right? So, oh, so embroidery is an old art. If you watch old movies, sometimes countryside movies from the Western countries, you see that this embroidery has been in use for a very long time. Embroidery, and then there's one art. I've forgotten the name. They also use these threads for stitching. They could even make a whole picture of a family with that this thing art. I've forgotten the name. If I remember, I'll let you know. So it's an old art and it has been in the system up to date. Now we have realized that embroidery lasts longer. For example, if you are into already made production of garments, okay, and then you want to put your label on your garment, we have different types of label, yes. Some you print on it. We have some of the satins you print on it and then you attach it to your garment. We have some you can even print at the back of the garment itself, just inside, to showcase your brand and whatnot, and then how to use the garment because it is in a certain type of fabric, how to handle it. All those information is on the label. However, we also have the embroidered labels, and they last longer because they can adhere or stand even harsh washing. Their style of washing. It can stand it for a very long time until the clothing even wears out. But some of the printed ones, you realize that the printing on the satin is fading off. It will fade off and become a plain fabric. So embroidery is very durable. If you want something that will stay longer on your clothing, that is just an example. So embroidery may include materials such as pearls, beads, quills, and sequins. Okay, we do embroidery, but you see, someone asks, so what is the difference between the embellishment and then the embroidery? The embroidery comes with thread. There's stranded cotton. For example, if you want to create something like a flower, the stem, you are going to use the stranded cotton, for example. You blend it, the stranded cotton, and then use your stem stitches. And then when you get to the leaves, you do same. But maybe when you get to the flowery part of the leaves, you may decide to use a cylindrical glass bead to get the leaf, so you can blend both these materials and then the stranded cotton. But in embellishment, you may end up seeing only the beads or the sequins. Okay. Now we have varieties of embroidery. Of embroidery. We have the embroidery, flat embroidery, and the 3D embroidery. The flat embroidery is just done on the fabric itself. I brought samples of hats or cape. So you realize that the first one, the embroidery is flat. They just back the back of the fabric with what we people know as stiff or sometimes coat lining, depending on the fabric that is being used. Normally, if it is a dress, it will be coat lining or stiff. People also use stiff most of the times, especially if it has to do with Lacoste and those things. And then, so you just have your design. Probably, if you are going to do the embroidery with your hand, it's going to be a needlework. Then you just have to transfer your design onto whichever part of the garment you want to embroider, and then you start doing your embroidery. So in that case, when you finish, your embroidery is going to be flat. Okay. However, the 3D one is backed with foam. You add foam to look at this one. This is darks, yes. They add foam to the surface and then make the embroidery over the foam. When you finish, it will pop out from the surface and stand out. That is why it is 3D. So you see, also 3D embroidery, also known as puff embroidery, is a technique where foam is inserted under the embroidery stitch, thereby creating a 3D look and feel, okay, and feel for the work. The best designs of puff embroidery are simple ones that really pop out. And they are not usually not used for very complicated designs. They are used for initials, alphabets, signature, something like that. Things that are clearly spelled out, unlike what is up here. Okay, so that is the puff embroidery. However, a lot of people are used to the flat embroidery, especially we those here, but we will do both. Okay, yes, and I'm sure we prefer the puff for us. Here.
It's nicer.
So applique, we know already, but we know that with applique, you have probably, let's use a garment for example. You have your garment already, then you have another fabric somewhere, you have your design. So you transfer your design to that other fabric, cut out the design, and then come and paste it on the garment. You either paste by using fabric glue or any other adhesive that will be okay for fabric, or you stitch with a machine or your hand, depending on the look you want. Okay, so that is applique. However, yeah, patched pocket on a shirt is also an applique technique. Yeah, now come.
So some of the techniques I did it with my investor. Doesn't mean I will repeat them again. Like the applique and the patchwork. I did it with my investor. That was level 100 seconds.
Where is it?
It's at the hostel.
So our next class, you bring it.
Okay.
Then we can build on it. Then yes, we have to, but let me have a look at it first. Then I'll know if we leave it there or we build on, because we may also have to display our album. Yes. So we have the patchwork too, which you cut your this thing in small pieces depending on the design of the designer. It is not, this is just a sample. It's not like you cut them in squares or whatever. It depends on what you are doing. All right. So with the patchwork, you patch pieces of fabrics. It could be different fabric. It can even be the same fabric depending on what you are creating. Then we've even been doing patchwork in garments, where you cut different fabrics, join them in different ways, and use it for a garment. Do you know the history behind patchwork? The history behind patchwork is, at first, they value this cloth thing. In the African setting, we value cloth. So, I've been able to buy, let me just take it for example, GTP. I have Holland. I have this, I have that, I have bought this and that. So they have stitched those garments and they have pieces of all those garments. So one day they'll just go and pick all the pieces, and then the dressmaker, they don't even say seamstress, those times it's a dressmaker. They'll stitch all the garment fabric pieces together to make a garment. When the person wears it, the person is trying to tell you that all these pieces I have in my garments, I have those fabrics, those expensive pieces you are seeing. She has all of it, and she has been able to possess all of that. It's very interesting. That is the history, which means the person is wealthy at that time. Then a time came and they said coat of many colors, and then a song was called coat of many colors, whatever. And then the people were thinking, okay, this means that the mother didn't have money. That was the story behind it. The mother didn't have money, so she gathered pieces to make a clothing for the child. Now, let's come back to what happened to us also. Yes, as the century passed by, at a point, we also felt that was poverty. Then at a point, it became a fashion. So we don't even gather the pieces we have. We rather intentionally go and buy different fabrics and sew them. So it became a fashion. So right now, it is no more a poverty story. It is fashion. It is for now, though we are not thinking of, hey, I've been able to buy this fabric, the person is wealthy, but you have been able to buy different fabrics and you are wearing, and you have allowed them to cut the fabrics anyhow, and then they've made it into a fabric. When you can sew those garments, if you have, let's say, if it's six fabrics, and each of them is 2 years, 2 years, 2 years. See, if you are not big, it means you can sew a midi dress out of one. So we are assuming that you could have gotten six garments from these six fabrics, but you didn't do that. And you have cut these fabrics into pieces and made it into only one garment. This means you have money, right? Yes, that is what it means. So the story is interesting. So now maybe it has changed to, oh, you have money, back to its roots, like what our forefathers were actually doing. So that's the story behind Appliqué itself. Now, braid work. So this technique is made by interlacing three or more yarns of fabric strips. Braiding is in so many ways, not only the 3 3 we know. It can be in 4, 5, depending on the weaving technique that you are using. So we can see forming a flat or tubular narrow fabric. The three, it could be flat, it could raise a bit depending on the number of, should I say, fabrics you are braiding. Okay, so it's mostly used as trimming and for belts, and it's also sewn together to make hats and braided rags. That's for that we've been seeing it. So we have some rags, or we call it doormats, where you see that people have braided and used it for doormats. So that is for a braiding technique. Now let's look at cut and sew. This is one thing people, even when I was researching, there was another something. The people don't really understand the cut and sew. Cut and sew doesn't mean that you have your fabric. I mean, when we are talking about garment decoration techniques, it doesn't mean you have your fabric and then you just cut and sew it. No. Look at this lace. First of all, let's define it. So it's a technique where the fabric is slitted in different shapes. This is my own definition, so it will make you can understand it better. So it is slitted in different shapes or designs and stitched by bounding the edges with embroidery stitches to create a laced effect. So this is an example of cut and sew. So you can have your fabric and cut through the fabric with a sharp object, maybe with a sharp small knife, sharp blade, sharp cutter, sharp scissors, but the scissors depending on the depth of what you are cutting. So what you are cutting will determine the kind of tool that will be appropriate. So let's take this lace for example. You can see that it's been cut in different shapes, the holes. However, the edges have been stitched and bounded. This is not a small job. This is not a small job if you should go. But this picture here itself is like a lace. Okay, it's like a lace. And what we are talking on here right now, we are looking at handwork. Okay, like needle or something you do with your hand, not with a machine. So the cut and sew, this is the effect. This is how it looks like, depending on the design that you are working with. You can also do that on a garment, maybe the neckline. You do your own design cutting and then you bound the edge. Sometimes people don't even use the hand stitches or the embroidery stitch to close the edges or to seal off the edges. You may bind it depending on how big. The bigger the area, you can bind it, for example, with satin bias, cotton bias. You do those things as well. If it's as small as that, like the lacing, you can't use it. So depend on what you are doing. But mostly, we use the stitches to bind the edges so that it wouldn't free, okay, or the yarns coming off. So that is the cut and sew. Then we have the crocheting, which we all know. It's now with the crocheting needle, and then we get the yarns for crocheting, and then you crochet whatever you want to crochet. For crocheting, we can crochet bags, hats, dresses. It's a lot of things. So depending on table mats, they are the simple ones and all that. Then we have knitting. Now, what is the difference between knitting and crocheting?
With crocheting, I think with crocheting, you can see it's being separated a little. It's not really tightened.
With crocheting,
Yes.
okay, and then knit.
Knitting and tightly packed together.
Yes, but there's another thing also. So aside knitting is closely packed a bit than like what I'm wearing now is knitting now than crocheting. Crocheting is more porous, it has more holes in it than knitting. But aside that difference, crocheting usually uses one needle with a hook, but knitting uses two of those needles, okay, to create such an effect. So you see that it's a method for production of textile fabrics by interlacing yarn loops with loops of the same or other yarns. If you say other yarns, maybe you have two colors, red and yellow, and then you are interlacing the two, or you have red and red and interlacing it, or you are interlacing just the red, you are interlacing just the red at a certain portion. It depends on what you are weaving actually. So it is used to create many types of garments. Knitting may be done by hand or by machine. Okay. Then this is one thing what we just spoke about. So knitting uses two needles and yarn to create fabric. On the other hand, crocheting uses only one needle and yarn to create a crocheted fabric. Okay. Also, a knitting needle really looks like a needle. The crochet hook doesn't have a hole and it's literally a hook at the end. Do you understand? So that is for knitting. Now let's come to embellishment. So embellishment is the addition of decorative items to garment, fabric, or any textile to give it more value as well as make it more attractive. Some of these items can be beads, sequins, feathers, fasteners like buttons, press studs. Now, I always tell students that fasteners like buttons and press studs, they play two major roles on a garment. They can be used um, or they play a functional role at the same time play a decorative role, which means if it's playing a functional role, for example, like a button, it means it's going to have a buttonhole and then it closes an opening. Same applies to a press stud. You know what a press stud is? Yes, there are two parts like that. So it will also play a functional role when it is closing an opening on any part of the garment. Zips, they also play a functional role by also closing openings of garments. However, you can also use them for decorative effects where it is not playing any functional role. I can decide to stitch zips on my dress in a decorative manner. If I open the zip, it doesn't mean that it is an opening. It is just to play a decorative effect, or give a decorative effect to the garment. That is its purpose. So, in any case where something like fasteners are used for decorative stuff, then they are not playing a functional role. So, you can use them for embellishment. Okay, so you can see some examples there. An example there. All right. Should we move on? All right. So let's move to quilting. You know what quilting is? All right. Have you done it before? Okay. So this is the process of sewing two or more layers of fabric together to make a thicker padded material, usually to create a quilt or quilted garment. But okay, let me finish. Usually, quilting is done with three layers: the top fabric, the quilt top, the batten or insulating material, and backing material. But many different styles are adopted. What are some of fashion materials that are quilted?
These materials that are already decorated when they come like lace materials.
I don't want to accept that. I want something that when you mention, everybody can say, yeah, that is it. You know, we have some duvets, but duvet itself, we don't, it's not batten material that is really used. Okay. They also use something over there. Technique over there is also quilting. Let me show you the batten material. It is foamy. It's foamy like the breast parts. Yeah. So, uh-huh. So this is the batten material. Have you seen the way it is? It's clear over there. It's fluffy. Now, when you go, we have been saying this is another clear picture. We have been saying so. These types are also used in duvet, but it depends on the inch or the weight. Okay, how heavy it is. Now, if you want to buy coat lining, like we've been saying, there are so many different types of coat linings. This is one type. There's a type that looks like this, and you can also iron it on a fabric. When once you iron it onto a fabric, it looks like you have inserted an amount of foam in it. I have a dress like that. The day I wear it, I will draw your attention. So when you look at that dress and you look at there was a certain part, there's a certain part of that dress. That's exactly where I inserted this kind of material. So when you look at it, you may think that there's foam in the fabric, or that is how the fabric looks like. It comes out like the way scuba looks like, that effect, and that's what it gives you. So you need to insert this in between the top fabric, which is the fashion fabric, and then the fabric you're going to use below. And then you will use your machine to stitch the design you want. Before you stitch, you might have traced your design on the fabric you want to work on. This is a floral pattern the person has used. So the person might have drawn these patterns all over the fabric, okay, before inserting the button fabric or insulating fabric in between the two fabrics, and then you stitch across with your machine to get this effect. So that is one thing. This one they will be doing it conk. Okay, so that is for the quilt. It's not very easy to do because the fabric is a bit padded, especially with what we have here to use. Okay, but we'll still go through this technique. All right. Dyeing. Now you are shocked. It is the application of dyes or pigments on textile materials. We know this already, such as fibers, yarns, and fabrics, with the goal of achieving color with desired color fastness. Now, over here we are talking about garment decoration techniques, which means you can also have a garment and use any dyeing technique of your choice and dye the garment. Last semester, the technique we used was discharge dyeing on the shirt. That is a garment, and then we use a dyeing technique to, get an effect on the shirt. That is also garment decoration. Then we have screen printing. Screen printing, you understand, but I said you will join these people. So we have a screen, a mesh, your designs have been shot onto the screen, and then you print your designs on the fabric following measurements because we need your designs to be straight on the fabric. So screen printing is also one. Aside printing on the fabric, we can also print on garments. Now that we are talking about garment decoration techniques, so you can also print on garments. Some of the garments that we see around these days, you see people printing 3D images on garments. For example, they can even copy a picture of you. It's sublimation. That is the sublimation we spoke about. So your this thing picture will be sublimed and then probably on a t-shirt. Then it will be laid and the design will be placed on the t-shirt and then you use heat to transfer the design onto your garment, okay, or your shirt, for example. That is another way of printing your design onto a fabric. That is a method. That is heat transfer method. This one is screen printing, when you are printing directly from a screen, the manual way of printing. Now we have the direct to garment or fabric painting technique. Now, if you see direct to garment, you'll be frustrated. So another name for it is fabric painting technique, where you transfer your designs onto the garment. Okay, I wrote fabric painting. So you can have fabric slash garment painting, whatever it is. So you can still have your already made garment and then you sketch your designs onto the garment and then you paint the garment like this person is doing here. In most cases, if you are actually doing a masterpiece, you don't stitch the whole garment before you start painting. When you cut your pieces, that is when you paint your garment because remember, you are painting this fabric to look like a fabric. So, or a design that is already on the fabric. So let's say, for example, you have a fabric like mercerized cotton. You know mercerized cotton now. So a fabric like that can absorb dyes or whatever paint you want, fabric paint you are using. So you have sketched your patterns on the garment when it is in its pieces stage. Maybe you are stitching a body, so you've cut the front piece, the back, the sleeve, and everything, and then you do your sketching on it. And so you see, you paint to the edge of the fabric. So once you are done, when you stitch, it looks original. But if you had already stitched the fabric completely and then you paint, maybe a design like what we have here, it may not look complete unless the design you are painting is supposed to be on a certain part of the garment only. For example, the center front part is not supposed to extend to the side. Maybe it is a crest. That one, you have just a portion. It's not going to enter into any seam. But if it is a design that will look like fabric something, then you have to paint it at the flat pieces stage before you stitch it and wait for it to dry. You fix it with your heat iron, okay, before you do the stitching. So this fabric or direct to garment painting technique depends on the design the designer is working with. So you see, from there we are going to have our practical sessions, and the practical sessions involve everything here. So you will design and construct a pictorial batik on garments. We still have our wax, so we are going to do it. And then, but we'll do it with these people. When they are doing it, then you do yours also. So that the students design and construct a pictorial textile print on garments. You see this textile prints? There are so many ways to print, like I mentioned, so that is not a problem. So we'll have our revision when the time is due, and then our assessment as well. So the practical session will be live here. So this is just a theory part to introduce you to the embellishment. Okay, right. So thanks for your attention. We meet in the next